You've probably done it without even noticing. You walk into a conversation trying to be clear, understood, or reasonable. You explain, you justify, you clarify. You keep talking until your throat is dry, and still, you walk away feeling small, invisible, like no one really heard you. Here's the truth you don't want to admit. Every time you over-explain, you leak power. Every time you talk to prove a point, you expose the exact place where you need approval. And the people around you, they're not listening to understand. They're listening to size you up, to test your limits. They feel your desperation to be understood, and they use it. If you enjoy this type of content, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Because here's how power works. Those who truly have it don't need to explain it. Their presence says what their words never could. Imagine this, a room full of people arguing, trying to outsmart each other, louder and louder. Now picture one person, silent, calm, unmoved. They don't flinch, they don't react. Suddenly, every eye turns toward them. Why isn't he saying anything? What is he thinking? Is he judging us? Does he know something we don't? That's not passivity, that's presence. And presence, when combined with silence, is lethal. Because silence destabilizes. It makes people uncomfortable. It reflects back their own insecurities, without you saying a single word. And yet, most people still talk too much. Why? Because they think speaking is power, but it's not. Control is power. And silence, when chosen, is the ultimate act of control. Here's a challenge. Next time someone tries to trigger you, don't react, don't explain, just look, breathe, be still. Watch how fast the dynamic shifts. You think silence is losing? Let me show you what real losing looks like. It's when someone pushes your buttons and you flinch. When someone accuses you and you scramble to defend yourself. When someone doubts you and you bend over backwards to prove them wrong. That's not strength. That's slavery to other people's expectations. Most people are emotional puppets. One wrong word, one sharp tone, and they're off. Ranting, reacting, justifying. And the one who triggered it? Calm, smirking, in control. Because they pulled your strings, and you danced exactly how they wanted. But here's the twist. If you don't react, the game collapses. If you don't feed their narrative, they starve. And in that silence, they start to panic. Think of it like this. You're not fighting. You're not submitting. You're observing. And that's terrifying to someone who needs chaos to feel in control. I knew someone once. Let's call him Daniel. Daniel used to be a verbal punching bag. Every argument, he jumped in. Every insult, he defended himself. Until one day, he stopped. Cold. He said nothing. His toxic boss yelled. Daniel blinked. His ex tried to bait him. He stared. Not angry, not passive, still. And people started changing. Not because he became scarier, but because they couldn't figure him out anymore. No reaction, no feedback, no emotional data to work with. He became unpredictable, and unpredictability is power. So ask yourself, what if your silence wasn't weakness? What if it was a trap? Because when you stop reacting, you stop bleeding power. And suddenly, you're no longer part of their chaos. You're above it. Try this. In your next conflict, instead of defending yourself, say nothing. Just hold eye contact. Watch how fast they unravel. Silence isn't the absence of sound. It's a message. And if you understand what it says, you'll never need to raise your voice again. Nietzsche knew this before psychology could even name it. He saw that people don't argue to find truth. They argue to protect their ego. And silence? Silence doesn't just remove the fight. It removes the stage. You're conditioned to think silence is defeat, that if you don't respond, they win. But that's a lie. Silence doesn't surrender. It reflects. It turns the spotlight around, forces the other person to see themselves, without the distraction of your voice. And that is unbearable for most people. Here's what modern psychology confirms. In confrontational settings, silence is often perceived as judgment, even if you're calm, even if you're just listening. The other person starts to squirm. Why isn't he responding? Is he judging me? Did I say too much? The brain, specifically the amygdala, starts firing. Fear, insecurity, panic. Because in the absence of your reaction, they have to face the noise inside their own mind. And most people can't handle that silence. So they talk more, reveal more, crumble faster. You just have to hold, stay quiet, let the silence do the work. Think of manipulators. They thrive on your reactions. They poke, provoke, guilt trip, because your response feeds their power. Take that away, and they lose their grip. No reaction, no control. Nietzsche understood this on a brutal level. He said, the herd morality thrives on guilt, shame, and noise. But those who master silence rise above that herd. They stop needing approval. And when you don't need to be understood, you become untouchable. So ask yourself, can you be still while they implode? Silence isn't just some passive refusal to speak. It's a weapon. And like any weapon, its power depends on how you use it. There are 4 silent tools that, when mastered, can outmaneuver anyone without a single raised voice. 1. The shield, silence as protection. This is the kind of silence that keeps you from bleeding in public. When people come at you with criticism, accusations, or bait, you don't defend, you absorb. You don't show where it hurt. And because they get no reaction, they lose their grip. It's the difference between being unarmed and being unshakable. 2. The blade, silence as precision. Most people speak in bursts. You speak like a sniper. You observe. You wait. You let others spill their thoughts, their fears, their contradictions. Then, when you do speak, you cut straight through the noise. Not louder, just deeper. One sentence that ends the conversation because it exposes everything. 3. The mirror, silence as reflection. When you say nothing, people fill the silence with themselves. They project, they over-explain, they unravel their own stories in front of you, because silence creates a vacuum their ego must fill. And you just stand there, still, neutral, powerful. Let them destroy their own narrative. 4. The trap, silence as psychological tension. Tension is power. Most people rush to fill pauses because they're uncomfortable with uncertainty. But if you own the pause, if you stare, wait, hold the moment, the other person collapses into that tension. They feel the pressure and say more than they intended. They misstep, and you win, without lifting a finger. Here's your next move. Try holding eye contact in silence for 5 seconds longer than you're comfortable with. Don't break it. Don't speak. Let them squirm. And realize that was the moment the balance of power shifted. Let's make something brutally clear. Not all silence is strength. Sometimes it's just fear dressed up as being calm. There's a silence that empowers, and there's a silence that erases you. You know the difference. It's when you stay quiet, not because you're in control, but because you're scared. Scared of confrontation, scared of being misunderstood, scared of making someone uncomfortable, and so you swallow your words. You let them talk over you. You convince yourself it's not worth the fight, when deep down, it's you've given up on. This is the kind of silence that doesn't command respect. It invites abuse. It teaches people that your boundaries are flexible, that you'll take it, that you won't push back, and they start taking more space, more say, more of you. You think you're keeping the peace, but peace without self-respect is just quiet humiliation. And every time you choose that version of silence, something inside you dies a little. Your voice, your truth, your identity. Nietzsche called this slave morality, the code of the subdued. It's the internalized belief that your role is to tolerate, to obey, to shrink. That being the bigger person means being the smaller presence. But let me ask you something painful. When did you start believing that your silence was noble? When it was actually just you giving up? There's no power in a silence born from fear. That kind of silence doesn't protect you. It traps you. So here's the line you need to draw. If your silence is rooted in self-respect, keep it. If it's rooted in fear, burn it. You weren't born to be quiet. You were born to be deliberate. From this moment on, stop calling your fear peace. Start demanding a silence that stands tall, not one that kneels. Here's where everything shifts. The kind of silence we're after isn't soft. It's not passive. It's not the silence of the weak or the scared or the emotionally numb. It's the silence of someone who knows exactly who they are and no longer needs the world's permission to exist. It's the silence that commands. Imagine walking into a room and not saying a word, but people feel your presence. They watch how you move. They notice how you don't rush to speak or fill every silence with noise. They lean in, not because you're loud, but because you're anchored. That's the energy of someone who's no longer reacting to life, but shaping it. Nietzsche didn't write for those who wanted to be liked. He wrote for those willing to walk alone, if that's what it took to walk in truth. The Übermensch, his idea of the higher being, doesn't beg to be understood. He doesn't try to win arguments. He doesn't compete for attention. He's already won the most important battle, the one inside himself. So ask yourself, are you still explaining your worth to people who will never get it? Still trying to earn validation in spaces that don't deserve your presence? It ends now. From this moment forward, your silence is no longer a shield. It's a declaration, a quiet fire, an unspoken standard that says, I don't chase approval. I carry power. You don't need to speak to be heard. You don't need to shout to be felt. You just need to know who you are and hold that truth without apology. So let's seal this right now. Comment below. I choose the silence that commands respect, not just for me, for you. Because the weak scream, the strong observe, but the wise, they choose when. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.